Namaste, namaste. What's up? This is Yogi Ev coming at you with another episode of Evan Talks. Thanks for coming to this episode. This is the show that takes deep dives into fascinating topics. This week, we're concluding our deep dive into self-sabotage, why we do it and how we stop it. Learning to understand self-sabotage and the often unconscious motivations to self-harm are critical elements of personal empowerment. And that's why I'm doing this show, to help anybody who feels stuck in the cycle of self-sabotage to know, number one, you're not alone. This is a common thing that people go through. And number two, you've come to the right place to learn how to stop it. Now, last week I spoke with Vasavi Kumar from the Sober Living facility where she's currently recovering from her own recent bout of self-sabotage. If you missed last week's show, you can catch up with that in the replays. I'll put the link in the description of this video. My interview with Vasavi was raw and real. No pretense, no excuses, and no apologies. We focused on addiction and recovery because that's Vasavi's journey right now, and she is definitely not alone in that regard. There are a lot of people struggling with addiction. Now, I was able to break free of addiction and addictive behaviors thanks to yoga and medical cannabis. I've successfully broken free of the hold of over a dozen prescription medications, as well as some hard drugs, including ecstasy and methamphetamines. And I went into this in some detail over the past few weeks, and you'll hear more about that in this episode as well. But this week is actually less about addictive behaviors, and it's more about exploring self-sabotage from a lot of different perspectives. My featured guest this week is certified hypnotherapist Abi Levine. You are not going to want to miss this interview. Abi has been voted the best hypnotherapist in Los Angeles 4 years in a row by daily news readers. So if you or anybody you know is caught in the cycle of self-sabotage and you want to know why it keeps happening and how to stop it, this is the episode for you. I encourage you to watch this entire episode and share it with your friends. So let's get right into the content this week. Before we cut to my interview with Abi, I went to some life coaches with this topic of self-sabotage and asked them to answer the two questions we're taking on here. Why do we do it and how do we stop it? Here's what they had to say.
Self-sabotage, how do we stop it? Well, for me, it was finally believing that God created me for something unique, special, and extraordinary. And I really believe it. But then it was also the willingness to do the work, to build my armor, to protect me from other people's words, other people's actions, even the limiting beliefs that I had in my own freaking head. It was believing that God created me for something special. And if you knew that you had something special inside you, something supernatural even, wouldn't you want to do the work to figure it out? Wouldn't you want to do everything that you could to get rid of all of the muck and yuck and set yourself free to be who you were created to be?
I think we sabotage ourselves because we're afraid to shine. That we have these beliefs within ourselves that tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not capable, that if we get too big, we'll fail, or if we go out there, people will see who we really are and they're not going to like it. They're not going to accept us and we're not going to be successful. So instead of going out there and trying and then failing, it's sometimes easier for us to just not try at all and to just not put it out there. Stay in our comfort zone, stay where it's safe, where, hey, we might not like where we're at, but we don't have to deal with the heartbreak of failure or rejection. And so I think that's what it is. And in order to clear it out, what we've got to do is find those beliefs, find those insecurities, and clear them. Do the emotional and the mental healing to erase those pieces of us that keep us stuck so that we can allow ourselves to truly shine.
Self-sabotage, why do we do it? Well, personally, I believe there are two reasons. Fear and loathing. Fear of the past, fear of what we don't know, and fear of everything in between. Fear of what is on the outside of our world based on the fears we keep on the inside of our world. Loathing of everything that anything or anyone negative has ever tried to convince us about ourselves. loathing for what we see happening in others' lives, only wishing it could be within our own. Therefore, we destroy and disrupt from the inside out, usually to save ourselves from reaching what we're going for. And how do we stop it? Replace fear and loathing. We replace fear and loathing with faith and loving. Faith moves us forward, faith gives us hope, and faith gives us a reason to believe in other than what we see in front of our face. Loving is what introduces us to everything in the universe that is unconditional. When we replace fear and loathing with faith and loving, we suddenly end once and for all that horrible cycle of self-sabotage. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
As you can see, self-sabotage means different things to different people, and it's a very real phenomenon. We don't talk about self-sabotage much in our culture, and that's why I decided to take on this topic. You know, there's a saying in the healing community, in order to heal it, first you gotta feel it. So now that we made our introductions, let's dive in deeper. Abi Levine is an emotional transformation strategist and an award-winning hypnotherapist who was kind enough to want to come on and help me explore self-sabotage from a bunch of different angles this week. As usual, we'll be getting personal in this interview. Each of us will be disclosing some personal history in the spirit of making this discussion real and relevant. If some foul language and non-apologetic talk about drug abuse upsets you at all, you may want to tune out now because that's exactly where we're headed. Not for gratuitous reasons, but because this shit is real, okay? So let's do it. Please help me welcome to the show, Abi Levine. Hey, Abi, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Evan. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. So we're talking about self-sabotage today. And last week I spoke with Vasavi Kumar from the Sober Living facility where she is recovering from her latest bout of self-sabotage. And it was a fascinating discussion. And I'm really excited to talk with you today because we're going to get into all different types of self-sabotage today, not just the addiction kind. And so without further ado, I just wanted you to start by talking about self-sabotage from your perspective. Why do we do it? How do we stop it?
Absolutely. Now, you might have to interject with a few questions because I can literally talk about this subject for like 4 days straight. Self-sabotage is something that is so fascinating to me.
Isn't it fascinating?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it really is. It's like the juice, the meaty bits of the human being, which is so beautiful. From my experience as a hypnotherapist, what I have learned about where self-sabotage comes from is that earlier on in life, when we hear things such as, you're not good enough, you will never amount to anything, you can try as hard as you want to, you're never going to quite be enough, whatever those things that we hear, right? Because before the age of 8 years old, every single thing that we hear becomes like a program embedded in our unconscious mind. It becomes kind of like a coping mechanism with how to deal for life, whether it's true or not. The subconscious mind has no reference point as to whether this is a good program or a bad program. It just takes in everything that we're experiencing, right? So, if someone said to you, oh, you're just not good enough, you're never going to amount to anything, or it doesn't even have to be directly. Maybe it was inferentially. Maybe you were abandoned. Maybe you were abused. We pick up inferential messages by people's actions and behavior towards us, and that becomes a program. What it does, it creates this life script, and the life script is something that all of us run on, and our life script has a floor and it has a ceiling, right? So let's use money as an example because money is something that everybody can relate to, right? So your life script has a floor of just how much money it is willing to let you lose. And so it'll let you kind of hit the floor, and then you might hit the floor, and when you do, you will bounce back up again. Okay, so hit the floor for one person might be you have $1,000 in your checking account and that's it. And then all of a sudden they bounce back up. For some other people, it might be homelessness, right? That could be your floor. So when you hit the floor, all of a sudden you're inspired, you're motivated. Everything that you need to do in order to get more money becomes easy and effortless. You're on Craigslist, you're searching for jobs, you're looking over here, you're looking over there, you're showing up on time, you're dressing well. You know, everything about making more money becomes so easy to you. You notice all of the opportunities all around you, and your money creeps up, and then boom, it hits a ceiling. So this ceiling could be
your top limit.
Exactly. So this, for some people it might be $5,000. To make $5,000 in a month, boom, that's my ceiling, right? Or some people it might be $100,000 in a month, right? Everybody has a different ceiling and everybody has a different floor, but hit that ceiling, but everybody has a ceiling. You hit that ceiling and all of a sudden, boom, Abi, you couldn't give a crap. It is almost like trudging through mud to get out of bed in the morning. You can't remember any of the things you're supposed to do that day, even though you feel like maybe there's a bunch of stuff. So I'm just going to go to the beach instead, right? So there's a bunch of phone calls that you have to make, but you can't even think of the words to use in order to make those phone calls. So you just, I'm just going to do it later when I feel like it. Guess what? That later is going to come when you hit your floor again and you get motivated to get back up again. So this is kind of truly where self-sabotage comes from, is whenever you hit your ceiling, your unconscious mind goes, that's enough. And it does whatever behavior you need to do in order to get you to come back down, because this is the safe zone. This is the comfort zone. Your unconscious mind's job is to keep you in this space.
Okay, so no matter what your self-sabotage, whether it's addiction or whether it's just fucking off work and not doing anything, you're saying it's all the same thing.
Yep.
Okay, now it's fascinating. You're obviously speaking from personal experience. I know I saw a video of yours where you talked about your own past experience and you had a kind of traumatic childhood. And you mentioned being abandoned. So I invite you to talk about that right now to the audience, like your childhood and how that affected you and impacted you and kind of led you on this journey to discover everything you just told us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to share it. What happened was when I was 6 years old, actually I was 11, not 6. Other things happened when I was 6. We don't need to get into that. When I was 11 years old, my mom moved us to England, me and my 2 brothers, and then she decided to send my brothers back to South Africa. She put me in boarding school, and she just didn't come back. So the summer holidays came, and the school had no idea what to do with me, so they called me into the office the day before the summer holidays were supposed to start, and they said, we don't know where your mom is. She hasn't responded. It looks like she's not coming back to get you, so we're just going to have to put you in foster care. So the school put me in foster care, and that was a really traumatic experience for me because I'd only been living in this brand new country for 6 months. I didn't have any family around me and have any friends, and all of a sudden, I had to move in with this family who didn't seem to even like me particularly very much.
So weird. And then meanwhile, if I could interrupt, this is so traumatic. It really is moving. How your brothers went back to live with your father in South Africa. Why did your father not pick you up and bring you back there?
He wasn't my dad.
Oh,
he was their dad. Yeah. So it was a bit like, no, I'm good.
Wow. So in one fell swoop, you lost your brothers and your mother.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry to hear that. That
really sucks. Oh, thank you. It did. It sucked. It sucked balls. It was really traumatic, and it created these. My sabotage was no one loves you. So you're not worthy. No one loves you. And that sometimes when people get that message, that limiting belief that no one loves you, it makes them create a shell around them and goes, oh, okay, well, if no one loves me, me, everybody can just F off, like peace. For me, it had the opposite effect. It created this this overcompensating need to serve. One day I'm going to prove that I deserve love. One day I'm going to find someone who loves me, so just this overcompensating to like make the world a better place and take everybody's responsibilities on my shoulders and make sure that I fixed everybody I came into contact with, because maybe then they would love me and maybe they wouldn't leave me, so it created this like frenetic, like desperation within me. But at the same time, it was very passive aggressive because I didn't let anybody close. So my real self-sabotage came in where I didn't develop any relationships that I actually felt an emotional connection with. And so everybody who came into my life, the next day I could have taken or left. My best friends, I could turn around one day and just kind of drop the mic and peace out and move to, Australia, because all the relationships I was developing just had no emotional connection, because if I didn't connect,
Wow.
They could never leave me.
And so that's pretty deep. How long did that go on? I mean, so from 11, that probably started manifesting when you started having relationships in your teenage years, and going until probably your mid-20s or something like that. How long when did you catch yourself in this, and how did you get out of it?
Oh, that's such a great question. I caught myself in it when I was a single mom, because I married a man, had an amazing daughter, divorced him because, again, that emotional connection, I hadn't created it. So boom, one day I'm like, oh, this is not working for me. And I had been homeless 4 times, and I was living on like $25 a week for food. And one of my friends took me by the shoulders, and she just basically said, stop running. You keep trying to run away from your pain, thinking that you're running towards something, but you're not. You're never going to escape the pain that you have inside. You need to confront it. And that was, boom, that was my light bulb moment. And I realized that all of that sprinting across the field that I felt like I'd been doing, and throwing like flowers and gifts at everybody, thinking that I'm creating all of this goodwill around me, like it was nothing. It was just a pile of ash. And I realized that it was time to face what I'd been running from for so long. Yeah, and then I found hypnotherapy, and I started working on myself, and I realized that you actually can let go of some of that stuff. I didn't need to carry it as like, the cross of conviction on my back my whole life. I could actually like let it go. I hadn't done anything to deserve to be punished, and it wasn't personal. It was stuff that was going on with my mom's life. So, I learned how to forgive her, and I learned how to use that fear of abandonment to fuel me to know that I can create a life around me where I will never be abandoned again. And now I have this beautiful life with this just the most amazing loving husband, the most amazing daughter who just like loves me to bits and pieces, who never wants to be away from me, and not in like an unhealthy way, but just she loves me. She wants to hang out, she just likes spending time with me. And I realized that taking my pain and then creating this life was totally within my power. And once I realized that, it became a passion to teach other people how to do it too.
Wow. So I know that in addition to hypnotherapy, you do NLP, right? Neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
And that, as I understand it, is a very powerful process where you can dig down under the layers of the psyche, and you can find your core wounds and your traumas, and you can, what do you do there? You re-experience it in a different way? You kind of re-narrate it?
You have done a little bit of research on that, I see.
A little bit.
So yeah, I like it. I love it. So hypnosis is a super gentle way of releasing those emotions. What I love about neuro-linguistic programming is it creates some space around the idea that we have. When I say the idea, I mean the limiting belief. So let's say that the limiting belief was, I don't deserve to be loved. Your mind, or grips onto that with all of its might, because that is its truth. And I don't know if you've witnessed what happens when you try to take a toy from like a 5-year-old child that you just gave it. Like if you try to take something from a 5-year-old child, its grip just gets tighter. Right? So it's not possible to remove a limiting belief. What you have to do is you have to create a space for around the limiting belief, so you can just kind of slip it out and slip something else instead that's more positive. So what it does is it interrupts that cycle of thought, so you can slip in a new, more preferable belief about yourself.
That's really cool. That's really cool because, you know, that's kind of an experience I have with meditation. Sometimes, you know, it's not necessarily while I'm meditating. It's the net result of meditating all the time. And then
Sure.
kind of in between times, I'll catch myself in self-limiting thoughts. And then I'll see them come, and I see them as like, oh, these are external things. They're coming into me, but they're magnetizing to my brain because the brain is a magnet. And so, you know, I feel it. And then when I see it, and I get that with the limiting beliefs that you were talking about, it used to be, you know, it's at the very core, okay, I'll peel it back yogically. At the very core, we feel like we are our thoughts. And our thoughts define who we are, and the sum total of our thoughts make up who we are. Then in spiritual practice, yoga, meditation, you know, I've learned that we're not our thoughts. Thoughts are things, and they magnetize to our brain depending on the frequency that we generate. And then, you know, theoretically, you can have access to all the thoughts in the universe. But what you were saying with the top limit and the bottom limit and the floor, it's kind of like what Jerry Hicks, Esther and Jerry Hicks, and you know those guys, would talk about the emotional set point. So like there's an emotional set point,
Exactly.
and it's in a range. And so
Yep.
anything that takes us out of that range, our subconscious is going to pull us back into that range until we can catch it, until we can see it. So that's one of the most empowering moments I think that someone can have, is when you catch yourself almost engaging down a rabbit hole, down a thought rabbit hole. It's funny, in my Headspace meditation today, one of the quotes was that thoughts aren't problems until we start to think about them. You know?
So clever, simple but true.
So,
right?
you know, you're talking about like creating a sheath around which you can kind of make a little space. That's a really hard thing to do. I spend my whole life on it, constantly creating space around my own self-limiting thoughts so that I can rise above them and I can kind of go through them. Back in the past, I talked last week when I was drug addicted and I was, you know, doing all types of self-harm and self-sabotage. It also came from that place of not feeling loved, being abandoned. You know, my marriage broke up. It was a disaster. And then, you know, the irony is that it leads to more self-harming rather than the impetus to just be good to yourself. You just want to punish yourself, just like you were saying.
Of course. Because you made a mistake. See?
So
The
what's
world
that
is
all
showing
about?
you that
What
you're
is
not
that all
worthy.
about? Why do we punish ourselves so much harder after we've already suffered the consequences of our bad decisions? Why do we then have to put ourselves through purgatory and hell for me, like over a decade before I finally forgave myself and was like, okay, I can live again now. I've punished myself enough for all the shit that I did to myself and to other people that I wish I could take back. And then I didn't think I deserved any happiness for the longest time. And then when I had some, you know, one thing or another, it wouldn't last. And I think that goes to what you're saying. These are the many reasons why I'm fascinated with self-sabotage, especially since it's been a long time since I've actually self-sabotaged. So now I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, wow, that was a long fucking journey to get to a place. And now it feels really good to talk about it, you know? So talk more about this. Why
do we do that? Why do we punish ourselves for making mistakes?
Yeah, and more about, you know, how we stop it. You know, when I know occasionally I'll hear my negative chatter And then if I can spot it when it's happening, I can name it. I can be like, oh, okay, that you're coming from that place, from that time that happened to me. And that is a residual dialogue that now is creeping up. I've learned to I don't know, I look at personalities like fiber optic cables, if that makes any sense. Okay. So you've got the big sheath, which is the cable exterior, the housing. But if you cut it open, there's like a million little fiber cables in there, and they're all wrapped around each other. And every one of them is like a different voice with a different storyline and different characters and different events that it attaches to. And when you're in any one of those things, it feels like the full you, but it's actually just one aspect of you. There could be hundreds of voices vying for control over the vehicle, like who gets to speak for me and who gets to drive this body, who gets to do what it's going to do. And I've come to, it's gone a long way to stave off loneliness when you realize that you can have a relationship with the hundreds of yourselves that you have, So talk to me about this. How did you experience that? How did you experience catching yourself in self-sabotage for the first time? I know when your friend took you aside, that might have made you aware, but there must have been times when you were just in autopilot and you caught yourself, especially those first few times. I know that's how it happens, where you're like, no, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole this time, but you need the awareness first. And so how did that manifest for you? I'm fascinated with this.
So, number one, I wanted to just kind of point to something that you said that I thought was really poignant. When you're talking about all those different personality types and all those fiber optic cables that are within that one sheath, something that's really important to understand is that none of those came from you. All of those different stories, all of those different understandings, all came from the outside, right? It's something that someone told you. It's something that society told you to do. Something that you heard on TV. It's something that you heard in a book. It's all from the outside. There's only truly one you. And it doesn't have all these different voices. All these different voices are you trying to make sense of the world and all the stuff that we as humans receive and accept as a truth, and then it becomes implanted in our minds, and then we watch. It's kind of like this, right? It's kind of like we're in the movie theater of our lives, but the film was segued together. Was sequenced together by different individuals and different entities that exist in our environment. So we're sitting in the seat of the movie theater and we're watching this film going, yeah, that is what happened. And we never once realized that the film is made by other people. It's not actually made by us. So, to your question, the first time I caught myself in self-sabotage was I had found, so one of the things I was doing was hopping from place to place, and I had found just the most beautiful, warm and loving environment with people who cared about me greatly. It was just friends, but people who really cared about my well-being. And after a couple of days, I started to get itchy. So I didn't notice the itchiness, but I started to get okay, well, I better leave soon. And I started making arrangements to move into this other place that would have been a disaster for me. And I caught myself and I was like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I going to leave this place where they are accepting me with open arms, where they're pouring their love on me, where they're pouring their wisdom on me, where they're saying, no, Abby, we got you. Why am I feeling this necessity to leave this place as soon as possible? Why doesn't this feel comfortable to me? And then all of a sudden, light bulb moment, I'm like, oh, because I've never experienced this before. Because I don't know what it feels like to have someone go, I've got your back. And I'm not comfortable with that. As soon as I realized, oh, this is actually a good thing, and it's just because my brain's not comfortable with good things that I'm finding that I feel this need to move. And so
and right totally then you were you able to give yourself permission, right in that moment?
No, but I did promise myself to give myself another 2 weeks before I made any decisions.
Wow.
So I just allowed myself some space. I was like, okay, I recognized what I was feeling. You're not feeling comfortable with this. You want to leave this situation. You don't have to make any decisions today, whether to let go of the past or to commit to being loved in the future, because it's just not an overnight process, as you know. But I was able to give myself permission to go, okay, let me just give myself some space around this, and I don't have to make any decisions right now. I can wait. The decisions can wait.
See, that's huge, giving yourself the space and that buffer space. I think that's really important in any kind of impulse control situation, whether it's food or drugs or sex or porn or whatever it is.
Or money or spending, right? Yeah. All of the things that we use to fill that darkness with that hole within us.
So it's like finding the impetus to want to engage in that behavior that may not be good for us or may not be in our best interest, and then creating a little bit of buffer space, a buffer zone to, as my former therapist used to tell me all the time, sit with your feelings. Sit with your feelings. Fucking hated when she used to say that. I hated sitting with my feelings. I'm like, I don't like these feelings. I don't want to sit with them.
I know, I don't want to sit with them. Kind of give them to the alcohol, like whatever. I just want to give them away to somebody. So exactly right. So I developed a technique that I teach all of my clients who have an issue with delaying instant gratification, and it's called exactly that, delayed gratification. So you have to, the first step is to acknowledge that you can do that thing that you want to do if you choose to, because you're a human and an adult and nobody can stop you. So it's to acknowledge, okay, yeah, sure, I want to do Coke right now. No one's making me not do Coke, and I can do it if I want to. But let me just wait 48 hours. Let me just give myself 48 hours, and I'll check back in with myself in 48 hours and see where I'm at. And then you do that process a couple of different times, and you stretch, you elongate that time between having that instinct and acting on it, so that you can really, create that space like you mentioned.
It's brilliant. I think that ultimately, in my own experience, that's kind of how I got off meth. Okay, but while I was getting off meth, it was like a 3-year journey down into addiction, and then it took me about 3 years to climb back out. So it was like 6 years ruining my life. I mean, in the journey down, I was having a lot of fun. There was a lot of partying going on. There was a lot of crazy shit. So that I felt like I was living the rock star dream. Then I was really just destroying everything that was important to me, my life, my marriage, my career at the time. It was complete self-sabotage on every level.
Right.
And then as I started I couldn't just replace. I always tried to say, okay, meth is really hard because I could go several weeks without doing it. And then the impetus to use would come back so strong. One time I was on a yoga retreat in Ojai. It was like the greatest experience of my life. And I came back and I was manic, I guess. And then I came back and I got back into my apartment. And as soon as I closed the door and I'm like back in my old life again, the next thing I knew, I was closing all the window shades and I was digging out my stash and using again. And God, I have so much compassion for that guy. It was a really long time ago, but I have to say that what allowed me, and the reason I'm sharing this, what allowed me to create that buffer also goes to what you said about when you were holding the iPhone and you were talking about gripping and that you have to create this little space. And for me, that was my yoga practice. And it was learning how to have a positive, self-loving relationship with my body and with my spirit and with my mind, and actually experiencing things that felt good. I used to think it felt good when I did a line of meth, oh, that feels great. But when I got really healthy, I understood a lot better what good really feels like. Good feels good. It feels healthy. It feels sustainable.
Clean. It feels like pure, like there's a lovely lightness about it.
And an amazing thing, but it was, if I didn't have that practice that allowed me to create the goodness, because that is how I have to say the reason I didn't go to rehab, I use cannabis every day and I'll occasionally drink, and drinking was never my thing. Like even when I was completely hooked on meth, I would go to my liquor cabinet looking for answers and I never found them there because I just don't love alcohol that much. So what I didn't want to do was go to this rehab place where they're going to say, well, you're addicted to everything, so you can never use anything. I'm like, no, cannabis actually really helps me and it's not bad, and I'm not going to lump it in to coke and meth and all that speedy shit. And so I didn't go to rehab, but it was very hard because I knew that I had to get myself off this. And, my parents gave me everything that they could when I was a kid, sent me the best schools, and I had a great education. And then I'm sitting there thinking, like, how am I fucking this all up? What an asshole I am. And so there's more self-hate and self-punishing. That didn't really help. Yeah. But what I did do, and I kind of happened into this, and so what you said kind of resonated with me. I wasn't going to share all this tonight, but what you said kind of resonated with me. And when you said that you have to get to a place where you can give yourself that 48 hours or whatever, I was never able to really do that, and I would lie to myself and think, okay, I'm holding off, when I was just not really in the mood to use. And then when I was in the mood, I would be like, well, I waited 3 weeks. But I did give myself the permission. And that's the one thing when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I took a year off college, and I got deep into yoga that year. And I was doing a lot of acid at the time, which was incredibly mind expansive. And my friends and I, we smoked a lot of herb. And we started going to these yoga classes, and I just got really into it. And I started going once, twice a day, sometimes every weekend workshops and stuff like that, to the point where before this year off was out, there was one time when my friends, we all got together and we were going to trip on LSD and, go take a hike or something. And I just wasn't in the mood. I was so yogified. And I was like, I'm really not in the mood. And they're like, oh man, we're still looking forward to it. I'm like, no, you guys do it. I'll babysit, we'll have a great time. And it was really like an amazing thing because it planted a seed in my mind that if I practiced yoga diligently, consistently, with a real intention to open my heart and mind, the side effect would be that I would no longer want to self-harm. And
I love
it kind of scared me away from yoga. Then for the next 17 years, I stopped doing yoga. I went back to school and I started partying again. And I didn't want to be that person who didn't want to party. I felt like I wouldn't have friends or I wouldn't whatever. So literally the whole next chapter of my life unfolded. Not all bad. Some of it was very good, but I ended up in this cycle of self-sabotage because I didn't yet have the impetus to want to just take care of myself and be good for myself. But later in life, when things were at their worst, I remember feeling like, hey, remember that year with yoga? Like, why don't you try that again? And that will get you off all of this. And so this was a deeply personal dialogue that I had with myself, and I didn't think anyone else would be able to understand. So I didn't tell anybody. I just told everybody that I stopped cold turkey, anyone who knew I was partying, and I just kind of just kept to that. And then the journey was very private and very private and personal. But long story short, after all of that, I really resonate with what you say, because if you have the tools, it's hard with those speedy drugs have such a grip on you
it is.
that it's very difficult to say, okay, well, I really want to use, but I'm just going to hold off for 48 hours because I know I can if I want to. But
right, and when it comes to drugs and also food, by the way, you'll probably have to shorten that time. You'll probably have to say to yourself, I'm going to hold off an hour. Like, I'm just going to wait an hour, Yeah. And then the hour rolls around, you're like, I'm just going to wait one more hour.
Food is very funny. Yeah, food's my last remnant of that. I have now I just joke, I said there's hundreds of me, but now it's really just me and the beast that shares tendency with my body late night, when I'm too tired to really hold out. And that's when the beast is like, come on, let's make a pound of pasta and eat the whole thing right now. And it's like, I do this all the time. I'll do this 2-3 times a week. And so I exercise a lot, so I'm burning it off. But at the same time, I feel it as well. So another reason, for anyone watching this, I've come through a lot of shit and I no longer self-sabotage at the worst levels, but we're talking about food now and I still do it. I'm human, sue me.
Totally,
So
Evan, because
let's talk about that.
That's really interesting that one thing I think is so important for people to understand is when you get those really, really deep-rooted limiting beliefs, it may take several evolutions for you to actually uproot them, right? So you might get over the worst variation of that behavior, right, of the self-sabotaging behavior. And then you evolve to another level where you're allowing more happiness and more abundance and more stuff in your life. But as soon as you start to raise to a new level, all of a sudden, you're hitting your new ceiling, right? So your ceiling was like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll let you go up here. That's fine. But then you start to want to raise even higher, and then you hit your new ceiling, and then your mind goes, no, I don't think so. And then your self-sabotaging behaviors will kick in. So it's not necessarily that you can clear it out. It might take years of different evolutions, but you can get, that might feel frustrating because it might come up and you go, man, I thought I'd worked on this already. I thought I'd gotten past this. What is wrong with me? I am definitely broken, But no, when you turn around from where you are, like all the way up here, you turn around and look back from where you came from, you can see how far you've traveled. So it's just that, as you go through these evolutions of self and spirit and business and abundance, it will keep raising its ugly head as the universe's way to show you, okay, this is the next manifestation of this limiting belief. Now you have to clear out this aspect of it.
That is true. And so it's so true, because it never really ends. We never really get to a place. And that's the thing with personal growth too. You never really get to a place. There's this saying in yoga, Om Shanti, it's Om peace, and one of my teachers he described it that Shanti actually means dynamic peace. And basically it means you don't get to a place in your life where all of a sudden you achieve peace and everything is peaceful. You get to a place where your bandwidth kind of opens to the point where you can channel all these energies and you can create the conditions of peace. No matter what's coming at you, you can generate the conditions of peace, but it's a dynamic experience. It's a constant vigilance kind of a thing.
Oh, absolutely. And in that, I love the way that your yoga instructor explained that, because within that, you are the one who holds the power, right? When we're in the sabotage moment, we're feeling powerless. We're feeling like, why does the universe hate me so much? Why does this happen to me? We don't have the tools or the power, or we don't, we're like, kind of like, doggy paddling through. But as you start to grow, you are the one who holds the power, right? So even when it resurfaces, you're like, oh, wait a second, I know you. I know you. I know where to put you or what to do with you. It's okay. We're going to get through this, So it's from a much more empowered and self-controlled place.
Yeah. Wow. So now I understand you're running an event next month, and we heard from some of your coaches actually that are going to be speaking at the event before our interview started. So talk to me about the event. Tell us about this event. This is the Lifestyle Hackers event. And this is going to be geared towards anyone who's watching this show, who's resonating with what we're talking about. It's not all about self-sabotage, it's about achievement. But let's hear from Abi. You're running this event and putting this together. Tell us about this event.
I am so freaking excited about this event. I can barely contain myself. So it's going to be a 3-day event. It's March 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be at the Embassy Suites by Hilton, LAX. And the event is geared towards overcoming your self-sabotage in all the different aspects of your life. So maybe you resonated with some of the things I was saying about personal self-sabotage. We're going to be clearing actual limiting beliefs. We're going to be doing actual processes to release anger and hurt and create that connection with self-love. Maybe your business is ready to go to the next level. Maybe you have money blocks. We have speakers coming in that are heart-centered individuals who truly care about creating positive change in the world that are going to be empowering you with the tools of how to do that, of how to take your business to the next level, and weaving in meditation and weaving in visualizations so that we can lock this stuff in, release any stuff that's not serving you anymore, and really allow your relationships, your life, your business to go to the next stages, the next evolution. I talk a lot about evolution. It's really a revolution. It's really you standing up and going, no, I am not prepared to let this chatter dictate how my life goes anymore. I am deciding to make a stand, and it's going to be filled with people who are also heart-centered, caring people, because those are the only types of people we're inviting to the event. Anybody with a shock mentality, literally, like, we're going to be stopping them at the door. They're not allowed in. This is not for sharks or people who only care about their bottom line. This is for people who are really looking to have a beautiful growth experience, learn some stuff, make some great connections, and just generate some friendships along the way. So I'm super duper excited.
That sounds really cool. And the other day we were on the phone and you went through some of the actual topics of the different mini events within the events. Can you just go through just a few of those right now? Because that was really interesting to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. So I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence, obviously, because that's my forte. So how to handle your emotions, why you care about handling your emotions, and really how to empower yourself and not let your emotions trigger you in your life. We've got Dan Mandelo, who's my business partner. He's going to be talking about the psychology behind sales. So how can you get in alignment with yourself and stay in integrity, but also make money in your business? We have Lauren, who is a powerhouse, who's going to be talking about creating your message, whether it's to speak from stage because you want to book paid speaking gigs, or it's to, talk to connect with one client, or you're on the phone, or maybe you're on a TV show. Lauren is going to be talking about how do you create your message in a way that people can resonate with it and say yes and get you and really get you. Libby is going to be talking about how do you create your content. Like, how do you create content that engages your following? Adam is going to be talking about online marketing. How do you attract your followers using this amazing content that you're creating? Tracy is going to be talking about, how do you create a podcast or a video blog? Everybody has a message to share. Everybody has important lessons and things to give. How do you get out of, what you're doing and get to the people who need to hear your message? And then Darren is going to be capping it off with, okay, now that you have all this great content and all of these great leads, what do you do with them? Like, how do you manage all these different situations and scenarios? So it's a really well-rounded event that covers a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, it really does sound really thoughtfully and mindfully pieced together in terms of like, wow, I had to figure all of those pieces out kind of on my own and taking different courses as you did too. And like, if this event existed like 5, 6, 7 years ago, oh my God, I would have jumped all over it. I'm so excited to hear about it. So anyone who's in LA and wants to go to this event, you'll see the link. It's lifestylehackersevent.com.
Correct.
And then we can offer my viewers, anyone watching this, a kind of special offer, right?
Yeah.
So,
do you want me to talk about that, or do you want to talk about that?
Go ahead. You talk about it. It's your event.
Oh, okay. So the original cost of this event is $497, which, if you knew the speakers that are going to be there, is totally worth the value. Some of these speakers charge literally thousands of dollars to get time with them every single month, right? But they're going to be all in one space for the weekends. You don't just get one of them, you get all of them. $497 would have been a really great steal. However, any of your listeners, your followers, or anybody who just happens to be watching this particular video can use your personal promo code, which is Evan Speaks.
Evan Talks.
Evan Talks, right.
Evan Talks. But if somebody tries to use Evan Speaks, you better let them in. But it's Evan Talks.
I will. Okay. I'll make sure that one is created too, and we'll just use both. Can use Evan Talks, and we'll get your ticket for just $49. So you'll save $450 on the cost of the event. You're basically just paying for the materials that are going to get you through the whole weekend. So it's essentially a free ticket. You're just paying for materials. $49 using the promo code Evan Talks. Evan Speaks will be active as well if you happen to use that.
So funny. So this is lifestylehackersevent.com. And what's the date again? This is in Los Angeles.
Correct. That is March 23rd to the 25th. So it's coming up.
So it's basically, is it a Friday night and then kind of all day Saturday and Sunday?
It is a Friday night. It's all day Saturday and then Sunday morning.
Okay.
And I should let your viewers know we're over halfway full. So if it does sound like something you want to come to, just go ahead, like as you're watching this, go ahead and just reserve your seat right now.
All right. Awesome. So it's 23rd, 24th, 25th. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay. That's in March. So that's just in a few weeks coming up. And I'm so excited to hear about this, Abi. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about self-sabotage today and sharing your story and for offering my viewers a discount into your event. It's going to be so valuable for anyone who can make that. And, you'll have contact for Abi through that website too. So if people have questions, they can send in a question or anything like that.
Oh, if you have questions, just email me at abby@lovehypnotherapy.com or just text me at 818-297-0267. Yeah, just get in touch with me. Let's connect.
Cool. I'll put those numbers and the email address up on the screen as well so people can see. So, Abi Levine, it was so great to talk with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was such a blast. Well, that's all we have for this week. We're off for the next 2 weeks, and then we're back with our next deep dive into what I found to be one of the most fascinating stories of 2017. And surprise, surprise, most everybody covering the story got it all wrong. I'll be rolling up my sleeves and devoting 6+ hours to this topic and diving deep on this one, and I invite you to join me as we make America smart again on the next episode of Evan Talks. See you in 3 weeks for the next episode. I'll be posting some how-tos and bonus content to the Evan Talks channel on YouTube during the break. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're at youtube.com/Evan Talks and like and share the videos. Remember to stay informed on important issues. And thanks for letting me help you out with that. This is Yogi Ev signing out. Peace.